Now, this is breaking news from WCCO.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Frank Vascellaro. A trial outcome has been reached in the Kim Potter trial in the case of Daunte Wright. Hennepin County officials say that Judge Regina Chu will read that outcome around 1:30 or 2 this afternoon. The former Brooklyn Center police officer is charged with first and second degree manslaughter. We want to bring in Joe Tamburino because there's a couple things important to discuss. Joe, we both received the text directly from the court. It gives you, up to the date when the jury's deliberating, when they stop. This says trial outcome. This doesn't say verdict. Are we being too particular, or are we being smart to parse those words?
I think the latter is correct. We're being smart to parse the words. Normally, when there's a verdict, the information is a verdict has been reached. Of course, they don't tell you if it's guilty or not guilty. They just tell you that the jury has arrived at a verdict. Yeah,
so our plan, so everyone knows, is at 1:30 we'll go live here on CBSN and on WCCO Channel 4 television, and it will bring you whatever this word would be. So there were 6 men and 6 women, Joe, and 2 days ago they said, hey, we need help. What should we do if we can't reach a consensus? You thought that was very telling at the time.
It was. Now, it was a conditional statement. It was, what could we do if we can't reach a consensus? But obviously, you wouldn't ask that question unless there were problems from the get-go reaching a consensus. So it would not surprise me if the jury is hung. However, we'll soon see in about an hour.
Yeah, David Schuman sent some information out. It said the court communication staff says that language was pre-approved. This trial outcome language was pre-approved, and it was not decided on today. So could they have talked about earlier about how do we communicate? Do we say verdict? Do we say trial outcome? Do we say trial outcome regardless if there's a verdict or no verdict? I don't know.
Yes, that could have all been discussed earlier, because what happens, especially in these very high-profile cases, is you have to gather everyone in order to announce what's going to happen. So you can't just say 5 minutes from now we will have something happen in court. You've got to take an hour or two so that parties can get together, victims' families, defendants' family, everyone could understand what's about to happen.
Joe, by my count, they went about 28 hours, give or take. Is that a long time?
It is a long time. Usually verdicts, from my experience, happen within a couple of days. Yes, there are some outlier cases where 4, 5, or 6 days, but most of the time, a good 2 days and the jury wraps it up.
Yeah, and for some perspective on that, Derek Chauvin was 10 hours. Muhammad Noor was under 2 days. Philando Castile case involving Officer Geronimo Yanez, that took a while. That was about 25 hours, Joe.
Correct. And again, those are cases like you just mentioned with Geronimo Yanez, where it was a complete issue of the use of force. This case was a use of force, but also accident, that the force that was used was done by accident. She didn't mean to grab the gun. So you could see how in those 2 cases it might take a while to decide.
And Joe, if you're the defense attorney and your client says, what does 28 hours mean? Is this good or bad for me? What would you tell her?
Don't speculate. You never want to do that as a defense attorney with a client, because anything could happen. A jury could come back in 1 hour with a guilty or 1 week with a not guilty. So you would just tell your client, please don't speculate.
Okay, you're a really good lawyer, and we appreciate that, especially anyone who you're supporting. But as an outsider looking in, what do you think 28 hours means, if anything?
A hung jury. That's what I would guess, only because of that note or the question that they sent before. However, who knows what happened yesterday? There was radio silence for a couple of days where we had no idea what was going on. But it looks like it would be a hung jury.
And it has to be a unanimous verdict, so just so people understand, hung could be 6-4, 6 against. It could be 11-4, 1 against, or vice versa.
That's correct. With a unanimous verdict, that means they all have to agree guilty or all have to agree not guilty. So one person could hold it up.
25 witnesses, Joe. This all began on December 8th, 25 for the prosecution, starting with Katie Bryant, Daunte Wright's mother, and ending with Aubrey Wright, Daunte Wright's father, and then only 8 for the defense, which, of course, Kim Potter being the main one. And you agreed with that at the time to put her on.
That's correct, because when you have a case like this, you really have to put the defendant on the stand. The defendant is the only person who could tell the jury what was going on in her mind. So without her testimony, the jury would be left speculating. They wouldn't know exactly from her own words what happened. Now, a defendant is never required to testify, but of course, in a case like this, you would want the defendant to testify.
Anything else we should be thinking about, Joe, in terms of this this language trial outcome, or anything in the case as we kind of do this prequel to what will be the main event coming up here in about 45 minutes?
Yes, this was a very unique case in the sense that the facts were not disputed. The prosecution and the defense agreed with all of the facts, and pretty much everything were on videos. But it all comes down to that one thing, which is, was it an accident or was she reckless, meaning she had no disregard for the rights and safety of others? So even after all of this testimony and physical evidence and the facts not in dispute, it takes days, obviously, for 12 people to determine whether or not this was proven.
Yeah, and again, as we stand right now, we don't know if it was proven or disproven, or if some of them believe the former and some believe the latter, because we're waiting for whatever this word is. So, Joe, I look forward to being on TV and here on CBSN with you again, and I believe we'll begin that around 1:30 this afternoon, and we'll see what Judge Chu has to say and what this jury has decided. It's certainly been interesting. So, thanks, everyone. When we get the trial outcome between 1:30 and 2, we'll be here live, as I mentioned, and we'll continue our coverage at that time. Thanks.